Photo Shelter presents Vision Slightly Blurred. I'm Sarah Jacobs.
And I'm Alan Murabayashi. Sarah, have you ever taken a photo of someone in public without their permission or their knowledge?
Yeah. I was scared, but
You were scared?
Yeah, but I did it.
We live in New York and we ride the train all the time. And I see people's Instagram stories where they're photographing like weird people on the train or what people are wearing. Mm-hmm. It makes me slightly uncomfortable sometimes, but they're not necessarily making fun of them. They're just sort of documenting what they're seeing.
We hope so.
And in a public space like the New York City subway, it's completely legal to do so. There was a piece on Petapixel a few weeks ago about a photographer named Joshua Rosenthal who showed up at the Ventura County Fair in California. Joshua is a street photographer. And so he was going around with his camera, taking photos. He started getting threats from people who thought that he was some weirdo perv shooting photos of kids. You know, he, in his defense, posted photos of his work, which are not my cup of tea, but they're not. It made me think a little bit more about street photography and what we're actually trying to accomplish, or what photographers are trying to do by, going to a county fair, and intent and vision and all these other things that go into photography. But it's so much more intrusive, potentially intrusive than other forms of photography. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it definitely takes a certain type of personality to go out there onto the street and just blatantly be taking pictures of strangers without asking them. The first person's work that came to mind that's current is Daniel Arnold. He does a lot of street photography in and around New York. It's really beautiful. It's really wonderful. It has this sort of like abrasive, aggressive feel that I think a lot of street photography does. Oh, no, I think there's definitely value in it. I mean, it captures style of the times, most notably, and first off, what do people's hair look like? What kind of clothes are they wearing? What technology are they holding in their hands? Is it an iPhone or is this a flip phone from, 1997?
When you say that, I can't help but think of Bill Cunningham, who for many years worked at the New York Times, who passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
But was kind of the street fashion photographer.
Yes.
Had an amazing eye. There was a wonderful documentary about him that was made, and whose name is escaping me. But that, to me, because the intent was so clear.
Right, because he was asking people, right, to pose.
Well, not always.
Not always?
Not
okay.
always.
Okay.
He would catch, people crossing a puddle in the middle of winter where it was not feasible for him to ask. But, at a certain point, he just became recognizable. So,
totally.
And he's hanging out in Midtown Manhattan, and
Yeah.
Nobody feels like he's being intrusive because it's just Bill. I think back to some of the big names of street photography. Garry Winogrand comes to mind. Mm-hmm. A well-respected, interesting street photographer. And he's sort of famous for having taken millions of photos, many of which were never developed.
Yeah.
And he said himself, I'm just, I take a lot of photos and some of them are good. And those are the ones that I publish. And so that's why people think I'm a great photographer. I contrast that style of photography where the subject is largely unaware versus someone like Diane Arbus, where she's on the street, but she's basically doing a street portrait, not a street candid. It seems to be a less aggressive form where you're getting consent to document stuff. But, even Arbus, she's going out looking for the weirdos.
Obviously, in photo, your relationship to the subject plays a huge role in what you're going to capture. And there are a few photographers that were street photographers, essentially, but had a relationship with the people that they were documenting. And one photographer that comes to mind is Susan Meiselas, yes. She has a whole series called The Prince Street Girls, where it's preteens, a group of girlfriends. Some of them were sisters, cousins, related. She documented them playing on the street for years and years. And then she became part of their little clique. And so the photos that she's getting are extremely candid and document Prince Street and what that looked like for them over the course of years. Voyeuristic, but it's candid, but also you can tell that there's care and empathy for the subject. So there's a lot happening. It's great.
I think some street photographers would argue that's no longer street photography. When you've established a relationship, that becomes more classical documentary photography. It is interesting to see the case of a guy walking around the county fair with a camera, whereas everyone else is walking around with their phones taking the exact same photos. So there's a psychological thing that people have where when it's a camera instead of a phone, I think probably like a lot of great street photography is being captured on phones nowadays because they are discreet and because people do react differently to this versus
1,000%.
right? There was a question raised a few years ago in an article of where are all the female street photographers? I thought about it because when you think about street photographers, you're like, yeah, oh my God, that's totally true. But then you think of Vivan Maier.
Oh my God, amazing work. Like, just the most gorgeous, amazing work.
I brought up Diane Arbus as someone who does street portraits. And Mary Ellen Mark is sort of in that same vein, where they're street portraits.
Yeah.
Vivian was in the style of Winogrand, where she is taking photos where people are unaware that she's taking photos. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you can say that there's a gendered style of street photography. I think you just fall into two camps, one where your subject is aware and one where your subject is not aware.
Totally. Another female photographer where the subjects were somewhat unaware is Martha Cooper. Mm-hmm. She, especially her series Children at Play in the City, she would document kids on the Lower East Side playing with like makeshift toys, like from the garbage. And she would just capture them and their joy and them playing. I mean, it's a really, really sweet body of work that she was working on like in the late 70s. I also thought of Philip Lorca Dicorcia, who created the series Heads. In like 1999, he started shooting in Times Square, and he rigged up a strobe on some scaffolding. He was away from the camera, right? He would fire it. He took 4,000 photographs of people walking through Times Square. That they were completely unaware of this. Only 17 made it into the final cut. But one of his subjects sued him.
Nussbaum sued him. Hasidic Jewish man basically said, this is a commercial use of my likeness. I don't consent to this because, these images are being sold for tens of thousands of dollars. So going back to this notion of intent, Lorca Dicorcia is a fine art photographer who works on projects with the intent of selling them for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. How much does intent and what you want to do with those images play into your feelings about what is good what is legitimate street photography and what is not legitimate street photography?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, intent matters in a lot of cases. Ultimately, I think intent matters from a legal sense. I don't know in the court of public opinion that intent makes a lot of difference because people are going to have a visceral reaction to any situation one way or another.
Mm-hmm. You know who shoots in like intense color that you've written about? Bruce Gildan.
Bruce
right?
Gildan.
Bruce Gildan,
yeah. Man, talk about people I want to punch in the face.
Okay, we just got to that portion of the show.
We did.
The portion of the show. Who does Alan want to punch in the face?
Well, Gildan's style is to literally be walking down the street, shove a camera in your face with a flash, and take the photo, and then walk away.
Okay, but what's the difference between that and Philip's work?
I think that there's something about proximity where people react in different ways.
Could you elaborate more on why you want to punch Bruce?
Well, the other part of Gildan for me is I think he intentionally makes people look bad. I feel like a photographer has a large responsibility to share empathy with their subjects. And I don't think that Gildan has any empathy for his subjects whatsoever. Arbus, she wanted to shoot the weirdos, but I think she actually had a lot of empathy for those people.
That's true.
Right?
Yep.
Photographers lacking empathy are what give photographers a bad name. We're like, I'm going to do whatever I want. I don't care I don't care about your feelings. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you had a bad day. I don't care if your religion prohibits this kind of stuff. I take my photo and I'm going to sell it.
Yeah.
So in the end, we want to know what you think about Joshua Rosenthal of the Ventura County Fair. Tweet to us at PhotoShelter or leave us a comment at blog.photoshelter.com. What could he have done differently to potentially avoid some of the public's scorn? Yeah.
And we also want to see your street photography. So if you're a street photographer, tweet at us. I want to see your work.
Especially if it's good street photography.
Oh, okay, Alan. He's the tough one. Send it to me.
But we do want to see it. And we'll see you next time.